Welcome to the Transforming Matters podcast, where ordinary women do the extraordinary. I'm your host, Rachel Babaganoff, and today I'm here with Ruth Geyer. Ruth and I met each other at our Wim Hof Instructor's course in Poland, and Ruth is an amazing woman. 20 years ago, she left the corporate world to follow her heart, and today we will talk all about burnout, perimenopause, and let's see whatever else comes up. So welcome, Ruth.
Hello, Rachel. Thanks so much for having me. Very excited.
Yeah, thanks for being here. I think it would be cool to just dive right into, we can start with where you are right now, actually, and what you're doing.
Okay, so currently I live in London. I'm German, but I live in London. I've been living in England for probably almost half of my life now. And yeah, I'm full-time Wim Hof Method instructor, but I'm also now in the process of doing burnout coaching. So where the Wim Hof method will be one of the tools that I'm going to offer. So it's like a nice, beautiful blend. It's been an organic growth, you know. So started off with Wim Hof method when I left the corporate world. And now the next step is to offer burnout coaching specifically for perimenopausal and menopausal women.
Amazing. Such an important topic. Let's talk a little bit about burnout. What has been your journey? Like, where did it start? How did it unfold? How did you know?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, you always know more when you're looking back, right? So, but my first burnout was in 2014. I had come back from Greece where I had lived with my partner, and started a job back in marketing or media, where I spent most of my professional life. And I got this really great job offer from an old company that I used to work for, and it was so great to start there again. Yeah, but it was a long commute to work, so I was on the road, not driving myself. I took the train, but car and train. One way, 1.5 hours, so 3 hours per day I was commuting. The job was really like working towards deadlines, really stressful. I had fantastic colleagues. I really enjoyed it. It was really good to be back in that field. But I suppose I'm a person who gives a lot and throws herself into things. So that job took out a lot of energy of me. And as you can imagine, like leaving the house in the morning at around 7, and then I came back at 7:30 at night. I was eating, watching 1 hour of TV, and then I went back to bed, and it all started over again. And there was no real time for me to recover. I didn't do any exercise, so it was looking back now, it was like the recipe for burnout. So yeah, but back then you're just in this wheel and you keep going and going and going. And because I've been in Greece and I had not been like I was in Greece. I was a teacher for German and English for businesses, which was a lot less demanding, let's say. So when I came back to Germany, it felt like I need to prove myself. I need to prove others that I am like back in the corporate game and I can do it. And, I'm like a real power woman. And yeah, well, didn't turn out so well. So my partner and I, we had like a long distance relationship. I was living with my mother, which is an additional stressor. Like, I was in my late 30s and then moving back in with your mom. Of course, I had my own area in the house, but still we were eating together. There were conflicts about various things. So it was the stress of job, living with a mother. It was a long distance relationship with my partner. no exercise, all these things made me basically go into burnout. And then there was a phase during that time with the job that my boss, she took like a sabbatical, so she was away for the most important time of the year. And because I was like, yeah, like really promoted. I don't want to say hyped, that sounds really arrogant, but like promoted in the team as the newcomer, and the client really liked me. I felt like I needed to give more and more to show the people and to show myself like, oh, you're awesome. Like I was really pushing myself so much. So I was doing my own job. I was doing my boss's job. So almost taking two roles. The other team members tried, of course, as well to pick up the slack. But it just ended up, I started having like night sweats, like crazy. And I was hardly eating anything anymore. I lost weight. I couldn't eat because of the stress. I had headaches all the time. I was dizzy. I started to have all these symptoms. And one weekend I was out with my dog. I was really relaxed walking in the fields. And then I had a panic attack, like a mild one, but it was a panic attack. Like I felt I couldn't breathe. And I thought something is really wrong. So the next day I called in sick, went to my GP. I told him everything, like a little bit what I told you now. And I was like, what's wrong with me? I didn't even think about burnout, because that was always like this fashionable word for bankers and business consultants. I was like, I'm just in media. I don't have burnout. So, and he said, oh, you have burnout. And I'm like, what? And he said, yeah, you have burnout. And you have like a medium level, I don't know if you say it like that in English, but like a medium level depression. And I'm like, and then I started crying, because in my family, there's also a trait of depression. And I'm like, it can't be that I have a depression. And like the whole house of cards crumbles. And I'm like, oh my God, I felt sorry for myself. And he said, I'll take you out of the business for 2.5 weeks. You need to relax. You need to sleep. You need to eat. And then kind of reconsider what you want to do and how you go about it. And I was just relieved that someone took me out of work. Like they forced me to take a breather. So I had like the permission by someone to not work anymore. And I was just breathing again. And I was doing, like, I came home, I told my mom, and I was crying. I'm like, I can't believe this happening to me. And depression, it was like this big stigmatized word. And yeah, my mom was then like really great, caring. We did lots of nice things together in these 2 weeks, because my GP said, you're not sick that you need to lie in bed. Go out and do whatever you need to do that feels good. Do anything you want. And so for me, that was like, spending time with my dog, spending time with my mom, doing nice things, going for walks. It was February. I remember that because, it was around the 14th of February that this diagnosis happened. Happy Valentine. And that was the first burnout. And but 2.5 weeks off, I went back to work. I put myself a bit back, and I said, I need to do less. I told myself, and I told people. I was quite open about it. I'm not someone who keeps secrets. So like to say, oh, I have burnout, I'm not telling anyone. I was telling people, I was like, I had burnout. It was all too much for me. You need to step back and give me some space, So that was respected, and that worked well for 5 years. I was good. And then came the second one.
Wow. Okay. So let's unpack that. Wow.
Yeah.
Amazingly challenging, and there's so much there. As you were speaking and you said you felt like you had to prove yourself, I find this so interesting because we live in such a like performance-based world, and it's so much about like, okay, what do you got? Like, what can you give us? And I think, especially as women in the workplace, there's this feeling, I don't know about you, but the feeling that we need to prove even more because we're a woman, and especially a woman in the corporate world. So looking back, do you feel like being a woman also played a part in this feeling of needing to really work harder or prove yourself more?
Yes, I believe so. It's very much to do with, in my case, speaking for myself, and how you've been raised. I mean, the world that I was working in is very female driven. So the world of media is like, I'm not sure, but my team, we were only women. It's 80% women in the media agency world. I don't know the numbers, but that's my guess. And uh, so I didn't really compete with others, but you're obviously comparing yourself to others. And if others manage and you don't, you feel like you're not performing well, right? So to understand that not everyone works in the same way, and you have strengths and weaknesses, others have strengths and weaknesses. So in the way that I was working in that field, my strengths were definitely always the interpersonal dynamics, um, client serving, as we call it, was my strength. Also account handling. But then there were parts with the deadlines and everything where I really struggled, and others are. I was gone there, right?
Yes, you're back. But
Hey, I'm back.
now there's two. There's a frozen you and you. But
Okay,
hopefully,
but you can hear me well?
yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, so to come back, it was not so much me trying to work as hard as a man. It was more to show in general that me as Ruth, I'm capable of fulfilling what I believed people were expecting of me.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe no one was expecting anything, but I obviously believed that people were expecting things of me.
Yeah.
And that is a pattern that is quite common in people with burnout. I learned later on, when I went into therapy. And so it's really where you're coming from, what your belief system is, how you've been raised. That's very much that's a common ground for a lot of people who suffer from burnout. There are different sources of burnout, of course, but for me, I was from that respect. So not so much trying to keep up with men or anything. So that would be not true if I said that.
No, beautiful. And I love that you know or can see that it was a lot related to your own, almost like an inner dialogue of,
Yeah.
okay, doing it enough, this isn't good enough, I need to work harder. And I'm curious how it was like then afterwards when you went back, because actually 2 weeks isn't so much time. 2 weeks is
No, not at all.
like a, well, okay, there's not so much that can happen. So what was it like then coming back? And like you said, you were very open. So was your experience different? Was it an internal shift for you also when you arrived back to work, or was it more external? What was that like?
It was there was a shift. It was almost like I need to take better care of myself, which I then did, but only to a certain extent. it lasted for a while, obviously 5 years, and but you know, I was still commuting, I was still working full time. I was just, what I changed for myself was that I was taking on less in terms of to-dos. You know, so when something in the team was coming up and said someone needs to do this, before it was like I do it, you know? And this time I was just like, nah, I'm busy with what I have and I'm fine. And because I had the burnout and I had communicated it, no one forced me to take something on because obviously they wanted me to be well. And so talking openly about it in your workplace is so important because people need to know where you're at. Otherwise, they will ask you, why can't you work as much as you did before? You know, and that kind of stresses someone, of course, again. So for me, it was a no-brainer saying, I have burnout, or I have burnout. It's something that kind of, you know, lasts for a longer time. And I needed to have that space. It kind of, the speaking out about it kind of build a little security wall around me. And I find that very important. And thankfully in my workplace there, they were totally accepting of that. And, you know, there was nothing negative about it. So I was very lucky. I'm sure there are other employers that wouldn't maybe react in such a way.
That's
But
amazing.
it's difficult because especially like in nowadays world, in the corporate world, the teams, everyone in the team is so strained, right? And
Yeah.
almost everyone works at like 110%. And if you then come back and say, sorry, I can't do that anymore, that amount of work that you can't do, the team needs to compensate that. But the team is already on 110%. How can they manage that? So something I believe in the world is really wrong because people should be only working at 80%. So they have always this buffer to the top that they kind of, you know, can take something on that another person might not, or someone in the team becomes a mother or a father and then they go on maternity or paternity leave. It's not very often, certainly not in the industry that I worked, that they can afford to take a whole new person or cover. What often happens is like, oh, the team will take the slack. But if the team can't take the slack, then you have people going like working over hours and everything. It's not fair. It's like, it's just, yeah, recipe for disaster, basically.
Yeah, it's a it's a system that's basically set up for, I mean, in my opinion, for people to be sick. Because if everybody's pushing too much, then also, like, yeah, what are you gonna do? Like, you have to do the work, you feel responsible. And I'm also very curious how it was for you, because I can imagine, as the person you are, who's very empathetic, who says like, no, right now I have burnout, so I can only take on as much as I can, knowing that then your colleagues need to pick up your slack and putting more on them, which is shitty for them also. Also, how you were able to navigate that, and if there was also like bigger changes in the system, or if it just found a way. Were you able to navigate this? Like, how did it feel for you?
Um, it was difficult,
Yeah,
but this first time that I had the burnout, the team was still quite well staffed.
you could handle
But
it.
over the years, with budgets being cut,
Yeah,
it shrank. So
yeah,
when people left, there was a high turnover
yeah.
um, of personnel. But I was one of the longest serving in the team, except one colleague. She's still there. So she's a resilient beast, she is. um, And this first time it was all right. I mean, I felt a bit bad, but not very much. But in my second burnout, which I think we'll get to that, that was one of the key stressors for me, because the team shrank and the workload didn't change, or it felt like it was getting more and more and more on less people. And then when you kind of break down and you say, I can't do this amount, I need to give a certain percentage over to the team. And they were like so struggling, and I saw that they were like then struggling as well. That made me feel so bad. That was really hard.
Understandably. So before we dive into the second burnout,
Yeah.
I just have one thought in my mind. At that time, you didn't have the resources like the Wim Hof Method, for example. So what was it that you were using as a resource at the time to also help you stay more balanced in yourself? I know one thing was saying no to projects, so that's also a really big. More internally, were you able to tap into different kind of resources at the time to help you?
That's a really good question, because I've been thinking about that a lot. Because I was given therapy, like the opportunity to go into therapy. So I found a therapist where I worked in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
I went to see her once per week, but it didn't help me a lot. I have to say that. It was maybe not such a good fit with a therapist, but I didn't question it because I was just so happy that I got one really quickly. So I did not take the initiative and say, oh, it doesn't really fit. Let's look for another one. So this therapy that I did, maybe it helped me a little bit, but looking back, I don't feel it did a lot. I started exercising more, so I started with Pilates, and that was basically it. So it was not a lot that I did. I really, looking back, I still don't comprehend how I managed 5 years. I don't know.
Resilience.
But
Resilience that's there.
yeah. Yes, I mean, in those 5 years, I quit to move to London. I then was asked to stay on with the company, which was obviously a boost of confidence, because it was the client back then saying, can Ruth please stay on? Which was great for my self-confidence. But moving on then to London, I moving back together with my partner after a long distance relationship, moving out from my mom's place, I kind of was able to restructure my or renegotiate my contract. So what I did was I reduced my work time to 75%. I did some other negotiations in terms of remuneration. And being in London, working 100% home office, like working from home, it was really healthy to have that distance. So I was not in the office anymore. So it gave me that space away from that stress that you're in when you're in this open plan office with all this noise, which I'm not really good dealing with a lot of noise, because I'm very easily distracted. So these conditions were not good for me as a person. You get used to it, of course, but it was not ideal. But working from home here in my little office, I was looking into the green, into the garden. I was able to take breaks without feeling bad that someone looked at me and she's like, oh, she's taking another break, and this was kind of really healthy for me, which helped me to continue to work without burning out too quickly again. But it was like a spiral, and it kind of started again.
It's so amazing, right? Like that we feel guilty to take breaks, to like have an environment that feels good for us when we're supposed to be working, which is like, being at a high level of concentration. You need certain things. You also need breaks. It's so unrealistic that you can just be a machine and go, go, go and produce. It's a little bit, it's a little bit twisted.
It is.
Glad that at least you had the shift to your home and that gave you a relief and some kind of opportunity to come down and ground yourself. And I'm curious then what happened leading into the second burnout, even in an environment that felt a little more, connected to how you would like it to be like.
Yes. I think many things came into play there. While the first burnout was really centered around the work that I did with the commute, and then away from the partner, living with a mother. Now this new situation was I started to take on a lot of work again. Because I function like, I have phases where I'm like really full of energy and power and I can deliver so much.
Yeah.
But then at some point it goes down like that again, But of course the to-dos are keep up, because from the time that I was really in the flow of things and the powerhouse, like taking off the to-dos and smashing every project. It was a lot of project management. So, and then at some point when this phase goes down, the energy level goes down, but the to-dos stay up. And then you start to struggle. And I was starting to swim, and trying not to drown. And, and here we come into the time where I now look back and think I had perimenopausal symptoms. I don't think it was brain fog, but I was not able to focus as long as I used to. I tired out more quickly. I was just not able to perform at the level as I did the years before. And I could not understand that. For me, I didn't even know perimenopause exists. I didn't even know that is a thing, Like I thought, at some point you hit menopause, which is like when you stop having your period, and then it takes a couple of years and that's it. But this whole structure around perimenopause and all this kind of everything that's happening, I was not aware of it, so it was not in my head. And looking back now, I think it had to do with me also burning out for the second time. And then, as I mentioned before, the stress of handing over to colleagues who have already like so much to do as well. So I was not the only one with a long to-do list. The others were as well. And then you had this feeling of guilt, or I had the feeling of guilt. And I also had the feeling again of not being able to perform to a level as my colleagues did, which was really painful. This was really like, I used to be a competitive swimmer in my youth. So I'm an only child, but I always keep comparing myself to others. It's really bad. It's a really bad thing, comparing yourself with others. It's still something that I do. Like, I started in that time when I moved to London, I started with hot yoga, which was, for me, that was the start of a whole new chapter of life, yoga. And, I was always like, oh, these people who do yoga, I don't know about this yoga thing, I go running, And then someone told me, I think you would really enjoy that. And I'm like, you know what, I'll give it a try. So I went, and it kind of transformed my life. And I do like my extremes, so I went for hot yoga and not to normal yoga, because I love heat. And starting with yoga, I started to pay more attention to my body, and what it tells me, where it hurts, where it doesn't hurt, yet I was there in the yoga studio. The one wall is like all mirror. And I was there like staring at myself, and then I was staring at the others. Oh, she can do that. I did ballet when I was young. I need to be able to do that. Oh my God. Can you imagine, Rachel? I was like pushing myself. And then we have like this yoga studio that I'm going to. They have amazing teachers, and they were like, "Stop comparing yourself." And I'm like, "Oh my, me?" She didn't talk to me, but obviously it resonated with me because I was like, I am comparing myself all the time. Stop it, Ruth. Please stop it. So yoga really was like a mirror for my soul. And that kind of opened the door to various other alternative things like the Wim Hof Method. And so yoga helped me to cope a lot. It also helped me, obviously, to exercise because it is a form of exercise. Some yogis won't say it's exercise, but I used it as exercise. It felt amazing. It helped me to get my cortisol levels down, like get my hormones back on track. The hotness in the hot yoga studio, it was like helping me to detoxify. It was like, it's yoga and sauna in one go. It's amazing. And and that kind of opened a whole new thing. And yet the second burnout happened. But I suppose the perimenopause played a huge role. And still those patterns of trying to show the world I can do it, it was still in me. It was still in me. These patterns are learned very early on and they're very hard to break. So I broke that by basically leaving the corporate world. That's helped me to kind of re-look at life and say I'm at a point where another burnout, it will have like a lot of physical repercussions because I'm at an age where my body shows now when I have mental issues, like stresses. It's showing in my hips hurting, my knees hurting, this and that hurting. Before, my body was not hurting. It was just functioning.
Yeah.
But at a certain age, unfortunately, or maybe fortunately, the body says, can you please stop and give me some time out? And that's what happened. And that's where I started to listen more.
Wow. There's so many gold nuggets in there because, you say that with this perimenopause, maybe started realizing more, okay, I cannot work so much. I just did a podcast recently with Amanda Bickham and we were talking about our cycles as women. And she was saying how, so many of us work and we work on a schedule that fits business world. Monday to Friday, whatever, 12 hours a day. But as you said, you have these like highs and then these crashes. Actually, it's quite normal, especially as a woman having a cycle before you reach menopause, that of course there's going to be a part of your cycle where you're like, let's go. I am like fully charged and I can do all the projects. I'm ovulating. And then you have like a little bit of a dip coming right before your period where you're like, oh my God, I go down. And we're not in work environments yet. It's starting slowly where this is a part of the conversation. And it's so interesting because she was just saying like, it could be as simple as asking your colleague, like right now I am bleeding and I don't have as much energy as I do in 2 weeks from now. So can I give you some of my workload, and then we can switch when you're bleeding. And it's fascinating because during perimenopause, and I really want to dive into it more, like this is so intense. Your hormones are really coming down. And I feel it when I bleed, it's like a minute perimenopause, like 3 days where I'm like, oh my God, I cannot do anything right now. Like I need to take a break, but this is like extended and then you're still expected to produce the same amount. And
Yeah.
something is off kilter. You cannot be at the same level of let's produce, let's create, when actually the body is asking you to slow down. And yes, this is like one part of it. And the other part is also, like you're saying, about activity. And I find it a little bit sad that actually it takes getting to menopause or perimenopause where we feel it more physically than actually, like, our body is always giving us signals like it's time to slow down. But a lot of the time we're like, okay, we drink a coffee, or, we just bulldoze through because we have to. And then long-term repercussions, or we have burnout, or we have depression, or in the worst case scenario, there's cancer that happens because the body is just like much.
That's true. Yeah. It's shocking that we are in a world, I mean, thanks to capitalism, we are in a world where we are working against nature. And it's not just the female nature, it's anything out there, we're working against it. And we have felt that now, especially in the pandemic, this waking up of a lot of energy coming up and saying it can't go on like that. It can't go on. And people consume, and they want more and more and more. And that is what the whole wheel of economy is working at, and it's like everyone should kind of wake up to that, and go, what can I change to make a change in that world? Like, it's a very idealistic thinking, but it comes down to everyone at individual level saying, I can't do this, I can't do that, or I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And I reached that point and I needed burnouts to understand that. So everyone has different messages. For me, it was my burnouts. And now looking back, of course, it was a hard time going through burnout because the symptoms are really nasty if you push it. But looking back, for me, these kind of wake-up calls were gifts. I see now the time that I was having burnout and the symptoms, I see it as a gift because it was a time for me to wake up. A new door opened. I walked through it because I said, I had enough. I cannot do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. And I do know that a lot of people are maybe not in the position to say, oh, I can't just quit my job. I have children to look after, which I don't. So it's hard to say, tell someone, oh, just quit your job. But for me, that was my way. And for me, it was to the key thing, looking back now, that healed me most was the understanding of wanting to do what my true nature is. And I always worked against my true nature when I was in the corporate world. I was always feeling this friction. I was always feeling this, something isn't quite right, what I'm doing here. I'm not doing something where I'm shining, like as a person, as my talents, Like, I have friends that from the age when they were young, I become a dentist. She's a dentist. She lost her job. I'm so envious of people like that, right? They know what they want to do. They do it. And like another friend who's a vet, and she doesn't love it anymore, but she still loves working with horses and stuff. So, but for me, I never had that. So I kind of slid into whatever, I studied media management, did then, went into the media agency, and I loved being among the people, but it was the people that really kept me there. It was not the work that I did. And then quitting, and I didn't know what to do. I had 6 months notice period, and I'm like, Ruth, just you control freak, stop controlling, go with the flow. And it was during the pandemic, and I'm like, 6 months notice period is a lot of time. I'm sure I'll find something. And there came the Wim Hof Method, and I became an instructor because that's what I wanted to do. And what I realized then was it's finally something where I'm working with people, I'm guiding people, I'm being able to let my true human nature shine, and that's being empathetic, helping people. That's something that's really fulfilling me. I love helping people. I love connecting with people. And when you do something that is so your true nature, that you can shine as a human being, that's what you're here for on this planet Earth at this very moment, then that's a really, really good thing not to go into another burnout, because you're like that's the recipe, that you don't need a magic pill. The magic pill is doing what you really believe your true purpose is, and that's me at the moment. So I'm like, I wake up in the morning and I look forward to my day, to the week. And before all the years, I hated Mondays. I woke up, I felt really low. I'm like, how am I going to get through the week? I wish it was the weekend. And now I'm like, today is Monday, I love it. Tomorrow is Tuesday, I love it. Wednesday, I love it. I mean, there are some days I'm not that great, but don't get me wrong, I don't want to exaggerate. But like, then I have a cold shower, I do my breath work, I have a cold bath, I talk to my fellow instructors. Like, it's like so fulfilling, and having like people to come and learn from me and taking that on board, what my story is, and I'll tell them what I went through. And if they just take a little nugget of that and apply it in their own life, then that's my job done.
Amazing. It's so beautiful, Ruth, like to have gone through such a journey of like finding yourself and like having to go through this darkness and the struggle, and then to find this like, okay, actually this is it. And I get it, because I also felt that when I found the Wim Hof Method, like, whoa, this is amazing. Like, alive, and I can help other people feel alive. It's amazing. And yeah, people are lucky also to be able to go and get an instructor like you, because also there's so many different ways of providing the method, and your story is so unique in the sense that people who are going through burnout or who are feeling like at the edge, you can really be a light for them and help them along their journey, and that's really incredible.
Yes, and that's what I want to do. That's at the moment, and it might change again in the future, but that at the moment, that is my purpose. That's my sole purpose. I want to help people like what I went through. And I guess I had to go through it twice, because the first time it just did not register. It was not the time for me to understand, to look in. But I suppose I needed to get to that age where I understand where I'm coming from, where I want to go, and to be able to give this kind of learnings, give these learnings to people, or ideally to other women, or anyone who's going through perimenopause or menopause, really, is that's something that I want to do. And of course, in my workshops, I don't only have women. I have like both genders that I cater to. But for the burnout coaching, that's specifically directed at anyone who goes through perimenopause or menopause. And I specifically say anyone, not women, because I've learned from a good friend of mine that also transgender people go through perimenopause and menopause. So I don't want to restrict it to women. I want to open, the field to anyone with ovaries. So, yeah.
Beautiful. love that you're now also going into this coaching. It's incredible. I would love to hear more actually about it, and maybe you want to share a little bit, like, if someone is going through perimenopause, what is your lessons that you've learned that could maybe help them, you know? Because you said like you had no idea that this was even a thing.
Yeah.
And I haven't yet, but I'm always like, okay, this is also a path that I'm heading down. Like I'm not so far away from perimenopause. So I would love to hear from you what you've learned and what you would share with people.
What I want to share with anyone is to make people aware that there is something like perimenopause. That's, it needs to be talked about, and it's becoming more and more of a topic, thankfully, because it's basically creating awareness around this and what actually happens and remove stigma from it. And, like, we don't need people to make fun of, I'm PMSing or being told by anyone. I don't want to say by men, but even by a woman, like, oh, are you like in this phase or that phase? It's not a joke. It's like really, it's biologically really serious business we're talking about. And what, yeah, that's the general message that I feel it needs to be mentioned more. People need to be educated about it, and corporates need HR departments. They need to talk about it. They need to make people in their workforce aware about it, so that women don't have to struggle when they're in that phase, and that they can openly say it without being embarrassed and without being looked at as in you are weak, you are lazy, whatever comes with it. So, and anyone who is in the phase and is aware of it, there is so much out there that can help treat the symptoms, which the Wim Hof Method is one thing, but obviously it's not for everyone. But there are so many things, and HRT, hormone replacement therapy, is out there. But people need to read up themselves. That's the thing, because you don't get a lot of good information from the GP in any country, not in Germany, not in the UK. I mean, these are the countries that I can speak for because I'm in both systems. You need to read up yourself and maybe find someone who is like really expert on that. And I mean, not like me as a burnout coach with looking specifically at people in this phase, but people who know about the hormones, who know about maybe the change of diet that you need to go through, the supplements and all of that. So it's more like needs to be someone with a medical background or something. But yeah, the fact is that you need to look out for yourself and need to read up yourself and educate yourself on it. And then you can understand more about it, what you feel, what you don't feel, things that are happening, symptoms, and don't see it. I find it's important to tell people to not see it as like an illness or something. It's a phase that we should be grateful going through phases like that, because if we're going through these phases, it means we're healthy, because it's normal. It's part of our life cycle. And it's something that I feel that anyone going through that phase is to stay positive and not feel, oh, now I have brain fog or this or that. Like, just sit with it, and I'm not saying enjoy it, but you know what I mean? It's like, don't fight against it.
Yes.
Let it happen, because it's part of our DNA. And even though that sounds a bit contradictory to taking hormone replacement therapy, but there are things out there nowadays that if you're really going into a depression because of your hormonal change, it's not necessary to go into depression when with hormone replacement therapy, you can counteract that. It's better to take good HRT as opposed to going to the GP and getting some antidepressants. You know what I'm saying? I mean, so read up and do a good old blood test, and maybe you need to be your own GP to kind of promote your health and to look out for you.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing this. And I also think a big piece is connecting with other women who are going through it. Like, I'm so grateful that you bring awareness to these topics that are so not spoken about, even though 50% of the population is going to go through this at one point.
Yeah.
And so that we should be speaking about way earlier instead of like this, how do we navigate it? But like, okay, this is a process that is going to happen, and how can we go through it in the best way possible?
Exactly.
Same with menstruation, same with pregnancy, all these things. So it's beautiful that you create more awareness and share, and I'm very grateful for it. I think it's so necessary, like you said. And I'm curious with this last piece, if you'd like to share a little bit of actually how the Wim Hof method, and maybe specifically the cold, has been a tool for you, not only with burnout, but also as going through perimenopause, how it's helped you personally.
I wouldn't know how exactly how the cold really helped me. What I noticed was when I started with the method, that's when I became more aware of my body and the messages it was sending me. So it started with the yoga, but with the Wim Hof method, the connection between body and mind became a lot stronger, because that's one of the key elements the Wim Hof method does, right? So it worked on me for sure, because I started to look a lot deeper, listen to my body, and I realized my periods were not that regular anymore. And then I started to question, is that because of the cold? Because I was still like, perimenopause was not on the radar. And what I do notice though was, so the ice bathing, I think, had not really an impact on getting my periods irregular. It was because of perimenopause. So but what it helped with is, or still does, is deal with the symptoms. Because I noticed that when I was not having regular ice baths, particularly in the summertime, that I had more joint aches, which is inflammation, right? We're lacking like the estrogen, the progesterone, the collagen, all of these things are going downhill. And as soon as I jumped into an ice bath, specifically like 2, 3, 4 times in a week, those symptoms were gone. And like the inflammation in the joints. And my sleep was also better when I took ice bath. I always do the breathing. Nothing is stopping me from doing the breathing. So I do the breath work all the time. But also the hot flushes, that they were like, I can really tell that there were some times where I didn't breathe for 3 days in a row. And then I started to have these hot flushes again. And I'm like, what? So I started breathing again, and the hot flushes, then they're not totally gone, but they don't really come up. Like I can feel like this little heat coming, but it's not as strong as it is when I didn't do the breath work. And of course, also the cold exposure. So having a lot of women in my workshops that are in this age group, they say exactly the same. Wow. Independently from me, they give me that feedback. So So and for most of them, it's both the breath work and the cold exposure, from what I can gather. It's not either or specifically the cold. It's really both that does magic. It's not magic, it's biochemistry, but it is, yeah, it's something that helps a lot of women, and it helped me as well. Yeah.
Wow. It's so multifaceted because the Wim Hof method, and I've seen this and heard this time and time again, it makes you more sensitive, and therefore you feel yourself, and then you're like, oh, this is what's happening in my body. Like, I didn't even for me, it was the same. I was like, oh my God, like I'm so much more aware of my cycle, my state, everything. And at the same time, it's tackling the symptoms, which is just incredible. And it's so beautiful to hear your experience, because there's not so much research with the Wim Hof method in women, although it's happening slowly.
Yeah.
But to hear that it's able to, for example, with hot flashes, reduce the hot flashes. And it's fascinating to me that it's not, I would suspect the cold would have a stronger effect, but that the breathing is also regulating the hormones, potentially the biochemistry in the body. It's such a simple tool. 15 minutes of breathing and things are evening out in the body. It's incredible.
Yes. Yeah.
Really. Wow, Ruth, this has been such a useful conversation, and we've touched on so many points, and I'm so grateful for you sharing your story so openly and vulnerably, and also sharing what's helped you. And to round it off, I'd like to hear a little more, if people are more interested in what you're offering, how they can not only find Wim Hof workshops, but I really would like to know more about your coaching and how people can find your coaching, and in what phases of burnout they have to be in to connect with you.
So yeah, the workshops, of course, you can find them on the platform on wimhofmethod.com. Also, the coaching is something that I'm currently working on. It will be mainly via Facebook. There will be a group. There will be a German-speaking group, as well as an English one. I'm still deciding on whether I should do one first to get going, but I have a feeling that I might do it in parallel, both German and English, so I can cater both markets, both languages. So you would find me on Facebook under my name, Ruth Geyer. The group is called Burnout Guidance and Prevention for Perimenopausal and Menopausal Women, and the German equivalent Burnout Begleitung und Prävention für Frauen in der Perimenopause und Menopause. Yeah, and that's where people can connect, because these groups will be there to create community, because community is, as we know as instructors of the Wim Hof Method, extremely important. It's where people can, share their worries, sorrows, whatever they feel they want to share. Maybe they don't want to share, maybe they just want to read. So I will be providing content there on this subject. I will be making live videos. I will put videos out there sharing my story or parts of it. So there is, like, to some degree, some information where people can feel inspired and motivated. And if they are either on their way, what they're feeling, I'm going towards exhaustion and burnout, that's the time where I can help them to prevent that. And I can also help someone who, like me, is coming out of burnout, as in they've had or are doing therapy, but they feel that they want someone on their side to take those steps, someone who's been there and done that and got the t-shirt. So it's important, and it took a while for me to grasp that. I'm not a therapist. I can't I would not advise someone to be guided by me who are in their burnout, because what I'm coaching needs the person to do work and work with themselves, work to it takes some effort and energy in the healing process. It's not something that just happens automatically, right? So you need to actively be involved and be willing to change, allow that healing process. So that was for me after the first burnout. I was not there, but after the second, I was there. So someone who's in the middle of a burnout, they need to see a doctor. They need to go and have therapy. In Germany, ideally, they go into a reha. That's where I went as well. That's what I can recommend to anyone. In England, you don't get rehabilitation for burnout unless you are privately covered and can afford it. So if you are with a state insurance, with the NHS, then you do get some therapy sessions. But I would advise anyone to take what they can get on the NHS or by the German health insurances. Take anything you can get and take it on board, because some things help you and some things might not help you. It's really a personal experience. I would be there as a coach to guide people and to prevent the burnout, or to guide people further out of the burnout, to find their way and their steps and find their feet in that kind of process, help them to be motivated, and show that by my story, basically, like to inspire as well as motivate.
Beautiful. Yeah, it's so important that we have these mentors who have been through it. And as I understood, then you're in the prevention process. Like, if you're feeling it, this is what you can do to support you. And you're after at the end saying, okay, we're through it. This is how you can integrate out of it and come back to yourself. And you mentioned the Facebook groups. And so it sounds like there's free content being given out, and then at the same time they can also do one-on-one coaching with you.
Exactly. Yeah, they can book me in one-on-one sessions, but it won't be like individual sessions. It's a whole program that I'm taking people through. Like I'm with someone for, let's say, 2 or 3 months, because obviously it takes some time to learn the tools, to see what works for you, what doesn't work for you. Not every tool is for everyone. Not everyone will be able to enjoy or work with the Wim Hof method. Not everyone wants to do other things. So it's really like it's a personal thing, and you need to find your way. And that's where we navigate together as a team, where I say, okay, let's do this, let's do that, let's try out that. And then you take that home, you as the person who comes with me, and you need to do your homework, so to say, and and see, does that work for me? Do I enjoy it? What's painful? Because one thing people have to be aware of is there will always be very uncomfortable situations, but these are the situations that are painful, and that's where we're growing. It's like taking an ice bath. It's never really absolutely lovingly pleasing to go into an ice bath, but you come out of it stronger and better than before, right? It's like a birth every time. So it's the same with learning a tool, opening up, breaking patterns. You need friction in order to grow, and that's something that I will try to teach people, to tell people to take on board, and appreciate the process, really.
Beautiful. I have one more question that I was just thinking, because you've gone through this process of burnout yourself, and the breath work is one thing, because with the breath work, I have seen and spoken with people and a doctor also, who said, like, the breath work can be so useful. even when you're in burnout, because it's really like giving the body the ability to come back to homeostasis. But like you said, on the other hand, the ice bath is not always comfortable. And so in the state of pre-burnout, would you recommend that ice bathing is beneficial because you're already in such a low state, and also in burnout itself, because like long COVID, when you're in long COVID, for example, your mitochondria are not so strong, and therefore ice bathing can actually be counterproductive. So in your opinion, do you think ice bathing at this time when you're very low is useful? And of course it's different for everybody, but in your opinion.
Because first of all, because my coaching is online coaching, so I cannot coach anyone with an ice bath, right? I would always send them to a local Wim Hof Method instructor. I would start with the cold showers. For me, coaching online, I would obviously stick to the cold showers, because when you're, as you say, rightly say, in this stress mode, that your cortisol levels are always up. It's an ice bath might put you over the edge. So cold showers, I think, are the way to go to start off with. And as the person gets better and heals and feels that they are on the way to feeling better again, normal again, then I would say, and however long that takes, that might take a month, that might take 4 months, and then go and proceed with a cold bath maybe first, like at 10 degrees. It doesn't have to be like an ice bath, right? We know that. You will, even if you go in a 12-degree water, you will have a shock response. It's always, someone who is in the burnout, they are most likely quite disconnected from their body. So there's this lack of mind-body connection because of the stress. And by being coached by me, my aim would be to strengthen that mind-body connection, where it gets to the point where they say, I can handle this now, and fully comprehend. Feeling is understanding. I can do it. I'm not pushing myself. Finding that sweet spot of understanding your body. Where can you push without forcing? So it's a very valid point that you mentioned there. It's really important that someone who is like burned out, and they would not be right in my coaching. They need to be like with a psychological professional to help them after they come out of burnout or before.
Beautiful, amazing work that you're doing, Ruth, really. And yeah, it's invaluable. It's really invaluable. There are so many people struggling with this topic, and it sounds like you have not only your personal experience going through it, but also so many resources and tools which are so useful. So yeah, I thank you again. And I will show your your Facebook, and the group is already open, or it will be opened?
It will be opened today or tomorrow.
Woohoo! Okay, so I'll share that, because by the time this goes live, it will be live. So I will also share Facebook group, so that if you are interested, if you feel that you are almost at burnout or coming out of burnout, Ruth is the person to go to, and hopefully, yeah, there can be a connection point there that resonates with you. I appreciate your time, and thank you so much for this really, really wonderful conversation.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Thanks for listening, Rachel, and everyone thanks for listening. And it is one thing I wanted to say now that you said, if someone is in the middle of a burnout, of course they're welcome to join the group.
Yeah.
And I would give them a certain advice, but I would not, say, oh, just stay with me, do my program, and then you're fine. I would recommend for them to go and seek help of a professional. So just want to make that clear, that the group is of course open for someone who is in burnout. It's just that it's important to ensure and understand that this is like something that needs to be treated by a professional. It's very, very dangerous. It's concerning your mental and your physical health. So it needs to be seen by a consultant or a doctor.
Yeah, and it needs all the resources available. So it's amazing.
Exactly, yeah.
Where people are going through it or have gone through it. So you also have the light at the end of the tunnel, like, okay, this is also, just like you said, it's a moment in time and we can flow through it and find a way out of it.
Yep.
Beautiful.
Great.
Beautiful so much.
Thank you, Rachel.
Until next
great to be on your podcast. Okay. Did you stop it?
I hope so. Wait.
No, it's still